What's up, guys? Happy Frozen Tuesday here. We've dropped like 40 degrees over the past 48 hours. Absolutely nuts here in downtown Pittsburgh. And what's nutsier isn't that the Penguins are playing tonight in that direction against the Blackhawks. It's that the Pirates are playing in that direction against the Cardinals with Paul Skeens on the mound. There's a pretty significant number of people down here today, and they're gonna freeze. Obviously, the baseball people way more so than the hockey people, since they can at least go sit inside and enjoy. I've got a few different thoughts here today that I want to bring up, and I'm not going to do that on the intro. Instead, I'm going to come at you with something that you come at me with on a regular basis. In fact, there's not one thing that I bring up aside from my sentiments on the quarterback situation that gets more blowback than whenever I say that the Steelers don't need a defensive lineman. That gets people all jittery because, well, you don't understand what, we absolutely need that. You need to have your next, Cam Hayward. You need to have your next whoever. Somebody's got to replace Larry O. And I agree with that to an extent. Okay. I agree that it would be a wonderful thing to have. The part that I debate is need. When I think of need, I think of the wide receiver position before DK Metcalf was acquired. Things like that. I think of need. And even then, people will come back at me and say, I don't think you understand what need means. So we're going to talk about it today. We're going to bring in Chris Halleck, of course, and talk about it with him as well. But I want to start by just lining up the football team. Okay. The opener, hypothetically, for this scenario is tomorrow. You've got Cam Hayward, obviously. You've got Keanu Benton, almost as obviously. And then from there, if you were playing tomorrow, I think that you would start Montravius Adams in the middle. Now, right off the bat, you'll go, see, there you go. That's it. See, you're starting Mon Adams. There's no way you're taking your team seriously. Okay, all right. But hear me out. Because I like Mon Adams, especially as a run stopper. But that all depends on where Benton lines up. If you're of the belief that Benton isn't your true old school run stopping nose guy, and I'm really taking on that stance, and you respect that Benton is actually very good as a pass rushing guy off the line, then maybe what you want to do is take Benton and put him into more of that position and bring in somebody else to be the nose. In that case, if there was a game tomorrow, Daniel Ekuale was probably going to be your guy. He's a recent acquisition. He's a real live NFL player. So between Adams and Ekuale, do you need to get a defensive lineman? I can see that. Okay. I can see that argument. I guess I get kind of cringy when this comes up because all that anybody ever comes at me with is that they gave up 299 yards in Baltimore. Okay, great. They did. They also were the NFL's sixth best run defense over the course of the full season. So first round pick, probably the most compelling case that anyone can make in this regard is that the class itself is so strong. The class itself has so many different players who could eventually rise up to be the best of that given class. And Chris is going to tell you right after this break who he feels. Actually, Chris is ready to throw himself in front of a moving locomotive to get this kid wearing black and gold. And we'll touch on that right as we come back.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
What's happening over there, Chris Halleck?
My internet seems to be working better now than it was.
You guys should have seen it before we were testing, before we went on. You're doing this. Actually, I'm probably throwing everybody out of whack by doing that. I shouldn't do it. Vic comes in and says, double shot. Here we go. Another great show. I just know it. Vic has high hopes for this program. And really within that, I'm sure that Vic has high hopes for this specific segment, as do I, because whenever I bring up the name Kenneth Grant, look at him over there. Look at him. Tell us why. Tell us he just fell from the sky right now. Tell us as if we never heard of the guy. Tell us what you feel about him.
Freak athlete.
What is he? First of all, what's his label?
He is a defensive tackle, but he can play. He is built like a nose tackle. So he will be able to. So if the Steelers drafted him at 21, he is immediately your prime candidate to be your starting nose tackle.
How's he built? Let's be specific, because there's some freak stuff here.
6'4", 331, but when he played at Michigan, he was playing at 340. So he's slimmed down from the combine.
Okay, yeah. And is that good or bad?
That's fantastic. I mean, let's put this in perspective. When Casey Hampton played, because Casey Hampton's like the benchmark for nose tackles in Pittsburgh. He was 6 foot, so he was short, but that also helped with his leverage. But he was also 325 pounds. He was a house. So, no, obviously Grant is taller. He's 4 inches taller, but he's also 15 pounds heavier than Hampton was whenever playing weight. Which means he's taller and a little more narrow, so it's a little easier to move him. And one of the big knocks on Grant is that he can play with his pad level too high, and that's using like football jargon of talking about pad level and stuff like that. But that just means that you stand up too tall too quickly and you lose leverage because of it. But whenever he plays with his pad level right, he's a game wrecker. He's an absolute force because number one, he's strong. Number two, his first step and overall quickness is...
I was waiting for you on this one. This is usually the first thing you mention to me.
Ridiculous when it comes to a man his size. A man his size should not be able to move the way he's able to move, especially when you talk about getting up out of your stance and being able to beat guys the way he can beat them, especially in terms of pass rushing. And when he plays when we talk about the pad level issues, when he plays with his pad level the right way, he's your typical space-eating nose tackle. He can take on double teams and require those guys to stay on him.
Just by existing. Yeah.
Just by existing. That's whenever he's playing the right way. And again, if there's any coach on the staff that I'm not worried about, it's who?
Oh, yeah.
It's Carl Dunbar. I'm not worried about Carl Dunbar. So I believe if this guy's coached up the right way, this guy can be an absolute freak. Just size, speed, everything.
Yeah, it's not. Whenever I make these statements about the defensive line and the need versus want and all that other stuff, it's not that I think, boy, I'd really like to not have a player like that. Okay. I just think of where the Steelers are right now, and I think that, we're still talking about a team that needs offense more than it does defense. I mean, right. I don't think anybody would disagree with that, including the Steelers themselves. And when I think, all right, you can say you're going to commit to one of these defensive linemen. If that means you have to move up a little bit, slide up, Chris. The same thing they did with really Broderick Jones is a better example than Devin Bush. Devin Bush was an all-out, let's really fly up there and get one of the two Devins, if you'll recall. Yeah, this would be more a case of, we like all these offensive tackles that are falling, but we sure like Broderick Jones better. So let's just inch our way up a little bit and get that taken care of. Is there a chance with all of the volume at this position, defensive interior, that the Steelers could do something like that as well, where they say, all right, maybe Grant's their guy. Maybe it's somebody else where they just say, you know what, we're just going to go up and get our guy. We don't like the number of these other teams here that might end up taking it at that position. And within that, our good friend Crazy Pollock wants to know who your top 3 DTs are in the class. Is Grant one of the 3?
Yes. So I almost don't want to include Mason Graham, his teammate at Michigan, in that, because he is number one, he is the consensus number 1 defensive tackle in the class and won't be in the Steelers.
Okay.
So I almost don't want to include him just because it's not going to be an option. So I'll just go top 3 defensive tackles minus him. And I would put Grant number 1 of those 3. Derek Harmon as a number 2 out of Oregon. He's gotten some Cam Hayward comps. That's a really, really high compliment, obviously.
I don't even want to hear that.
And then I would probably, it's mainly because of the way he's built. They're almost built identically in terms of size. Yeah. Some similarities to their game, but Cam Hayward has proven grown man strength, while Derek Harmon needs to prove it at the NFL level. I mean, he's strong. Don't get me wrong. He's strong, but and then Regal says Harmon over Nolan. Walter Nolan being my number 3. I have some off the field concerns for Nolan. There were some scuttlebutt at the combine about some character issues with him. Now I can't confirm that, but the one thing I can confirm is him willingly not taking part in workouts at the combine, or this one concerns me more, the Ole Miss Pro Day. That one concerned me. The combine, a lot of players don't work out at the combine, but to not do anything at the pro day, I think he did one thing at the pro day.
That's a red flag and a half right there.
What are you hiding?
What are you hiding? Exactly right.
What are you hiding? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
that's one of those.
Nolan, whenever I was at the Senior Bowl. Yeah. Sorry. I was just like, whenever I was at the Senior Bowl, like Nolan moved differently than anybody else at the Senior Bowl, but I just it just too many. Yeah, no, intriguing,
Jonathan
but no.
Says, hit the like button, y'all. I don't know where Jonathan is that he's using y'all. It isn't around here, but we'll respect it. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and above all, for crying out loud, make sure that you're becoming a member. And the way to do that is to go to dkps.net/join. When we get to the final portion of this show, the final mysterious portion past the post credits that only some people get to see, we'll reveal our latest update on the number of members that we have along our path toward 3,000. We're hoping to have 3,000 members by the start of training camp in Latrobe. Again, you type this into your URL. Don't go clicking the screen or something. Why isn't this doing anything? dkps.net/join is the way to do that. Chris Arkwright asks if we're drafting a punter this year. No. No.
They got 2 good punters on the roster right now.
On the roster, and actually they have the polar opposite problem. And I would imagine that Corliss Waitman, presuming that Cam Johnston is healthy, as we're all hoping that he is after that ugly injury, Corliss Waitman's going to find employment somewhere. Snowman just joined. See how Snowman does that? Justin Watson points out that he's guessing that last one, the y'all, came from West Virginia. So you have to go from y'all to yins whenever I hit the border too. And that is the border. That's just south of us, between here and Morgantown. Aiden, sorry, I totally misread that. Aiden says, are we confident in our left and right tackles? It seems like this offensive line is nothing but a gamble. Then again, this whole season seems like a gamble. That's because we don't have roster certainty. It's because you don't have quarterback certainty. But Aiden, the tackles, and I'm glad you pluralized it, because listen, and Chris agrees with me. I know this for a fact. We believe in Troy Fautanu. We believe in what he can bring. Okay, we also believe, based on what he told us coming out of the season, meaning at the day after break or the locker cleanout day, that he's fine.
Yeah,
he's going to be 100% healthy, not for way down the road, but for OTAs and so forth, right?
Yep.
But he's only played a half of football.
Yeah.
in the NFL in Denver. Okay. Now he played well, but then Broderick had an entire rookie season in which he played well. So there are, yes, big concerns. Calvin Anderson was brought back yesterday. There are concerns.
Yeah.
You would agree with that, Chris?
Yeah, there are concerns, but the Steelers are in a position where they have to let those concerns play out because they invested first-round picks in Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu, and well, when you draft somebody in the first round, you need to give it the old college try. And with Broderick Jones, you might say, well, 2 seasons was enough. Well, I don't say that because you can possibly have him for another 3, maybe even 4 years if you wanted to, without having to give him a contract extension through the 5th-year option and then obviously the franchise tag. But this is also going to be the first year that now some people have used it as an excuse. Like, well, he's not playing his rights. He's not playing the right side. Well, guess what? Now he's going to be playing his natural side. Now he's going to be playing on the left tackle position. And now there's really going to be no excuses. This is a sink or swim year for him. And I'm not going to throw away Troy Fautanu just because he had an injury as a rookie. David DeCastro had an injury as a rookie. So I'm not going to.
Dave turned out okay.
Yeah, so I'm not
his
going to.
Injury wasn't good either. That was when his knee just gave out on him. This was a preseason game. I remember like yesterday up in Orchard Park.
Yep.
Where he just went down, and it was like yikes.
Yep.
Dave ended up just fine. Obviously.
Yes,
Michael Cross says Jalen is probably going because of the glowing praise from Matt. I have no idea what that means.
Might be talking about Jalen Milroe, because
Jalen Milroe. I thought he was just misspelling Jalen Warren's first name. Sorry.
Well, if he's referring to Matt Williamson,
Matt Williamson. Now it makes sense. Okay.
Williamson's getting more and more on the Milroe train. So
yeah, health inspector says on the same subject, DK, are you afraid that the reason Jalen Milroe is going to the draft, by that I mean he got an official invite from the NFL to be in that green room, to be in that waiting room, which almost always means they know you're going in the first round because of the interest the Steelers have shown. That pick scares me. I don't buy that, Chris. So soon after Kenny Pickett, you're going to roll the dice like that on what? No matter how much of a fan of Milroe you might be, the one thing you have to concede is that he is a tall task of a project. He's not just somebody where you say, well, we're going to bring him in as our number 3 guy and just let him learn the ropes, and then he can come back like what the Vikings are doing, with McCarthy, and you just say, all right, well, McCarthy, he had his year under the whatever, under who up there in Minnesota, Sam Darnold, and now we're just going to let him go.
Yeah.
That's not this. This is a lot of work.
Yeah, this is it's definitely more of a project for sure. But I also understand the intrigue. I'm not saying in the first round, but I understand the intrigue with Jalen Milroe. Because if he hits, we're talking Lamar-esque in terms of hitting. Because a lot of the same similarities. Now, Lamar was a more polished quarterback coming out of college, but even then, when Lamar was coming out, there were a lot of people who were concerned about his ability to become a good passer at the NFL level.
I mean, the ball was so ugly coming out of his hands. And sometimes it still is, actually. He's cleaned a lot of that up to his credit. Okay, but when he got there, remember, you see the ball doing this out of his hand and everything, and that's what I'm talking about. I think there's a lot of work here.
There is, but if you put Milroe on the same, if you draft Milroe, whether it be whatever round, I'm just saying, if they draft Milroe, if they put him on the same kind of roadmap as the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson, let that first year be where he is the specialty guy. He's going to come in, pretty much do what the Steelers were doing with Justin Fields once Russell Wilson took over last year, but the fact is that Milroe might be already a better runner than Justin Fields. Like, it's at least a debate at this point.
Wow.
I'm telling you, Milroe is an insane. I remember watching the LSU game. Like, whenever I did like a full deep dive on Milroe and I watched the LSU game, again, this is against LSU. This is not against.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, we're talking about runs between the tackles where he looks like a running back. in terms of making cuts and vision and I'm like, okay, this dude is a legitimate runner, legitimate dual threat. He needs to clean up the short accuracy because he's all over the place right now. And he needs to be able to learn how to become more than just a one read guy.
Corey Davis is listening from Melbourne, Australia. 6:20 a.m. over there.
Woo!
Down under. See, that's my mixture of the Yinzer and the Aussie thing. Down under.
Down under.
He says he'd love to see Will Howard be the backup quarterback to Aaron Rodgers if the Steelers do end up signing Rodgers. Thoughts on this? First thought is no. Mason Rudolph would be the backup quarterback.
Yeah.
Whoever you're getting in the draft, Corey, and I think this applies to whether or not it's someone like Howard or anyone. They're going to be slotted 3. Okay, that's why Mason is here. I can't say this often enough, but you're talking about a quarterback, if it's Rodgers, who's going to be 42 years old in season. My belief, not my wish or anything, meaning in terms of you don't wish on people to get hurt or whatever, but my belief is that Mason's going to get more starts than he ever has in his NFL career, regardless of whether Rodgers is signed. Okay, because of what, this is a different issue. This is a different scenario for Rodgers. I don't know. I don't know if the Jets line was comparable to the Steelers line, but he's going to get it. Okay. Yep. All Steelers quarterbacks for about a half a decade now have been getting it back there, and he's not going to be an exception, especially if he can't escape. We saw what happened to Russell Wilson when he couldn't escape.
Yeah. The one issue I have with Will Howard is my personal NFL comp for him is Mason Rudolph.
Okay.
And I want to have 2 of them. It's not anything against Mason.
No. I get it. Art Rooney was the one who said he wanted a room full of quarterbacks that had similar styles, though. So Brian Jonker says it's going to take 3 or 4 years, but Tyler Shuck will be a top 10 quarterback. Yeah, he'll be 30.
Yeah. I like Tyler Shuck a lot, but in terms of like first round, no. And I mean, I like him a lot. There's a lot to like. The NFL, the arm is legit. He's got to prove that he can stand in the pocket and take some hits to make throws, because he doesn't do that now.
Jeff says we just ripped, meaning on this program, Jackson Dart for being a one-read guy, and he looks like Tom Brady compared to Milroe in that sense. I hear that about Milroe as well, as far as reads go, but I think there's way more to it than that, and the Dart's definitely more advanced than Milroe is in that sense.
Dart is more advanced as a passer, but Milroe is like also like 10,000 times the runner Jackson Dart is. And Jackson Dart's a good athlete, but I would not call Jackson Dart a legitimate dual threat guy. When Milroe, we're talking ultimate ceiling is Lamar Jackson-esque when it comes to Jalen Milroe.
Man, you keep dropping that. Like, yeah, wow.
Okay. All right, okay. But let's go more realistic. Jalen Hurts.
Jalen can get out of there and do damage. There's no question about that. And Justin, you mentioned Fields, can do the same. I like this point from Desiree here. She says, I think no matter what, the Steelers should take the best available player at 21, regardless of need, because the Steelers need help everywhere except maybe linebacker. And that probably applies now to inside and outside. When you sign Patrick Queen and you draft Peyton Wilson, and you rightly or wrongly feel comfortable letting Landon Roberts walk, then you're okay on the inside. Nobody needs to hear from us what they have on the outside.
Yep.
Best player available. Someone else brought up here, and I apologize, I can't find it, whether or not that was just a Dan Rooney thing or whether or not that's still an institutional thing. To me, I get the sense that the Steelers now do best player available as only a thing that they say. And that really began with Najee Harris, when they all sat there at the draft going, oh, no, best player available. It's all we're looking, best player available. And everybody knew. And actually, the same thing applied with Kenny. Yeah. It wasn't going to be, we're not going to force ourselves to take a quarterback. We're not going to do that. We're going to just stick with best player available. And they haven't done that in some time. They took offensive tackles when they need offensive tackles, right? I mean, when is the last time that they just went straight BPA?
Straight BPA.
I mean, Devin Bush was that. They went for trying to replace Ryan Shazier. They haven't done it in a while. Yeah.
I mean, straight up best player available. That might have been TJ, honestly.
Right. That's actually a good one.
I mean, honestly, I understand edge rusher was kind of still of a need at the time, but I mean, also TJ at that time, because they were picking late in the first round then, and yeah. So I might go TJ, but I do think that the current philosophy under Omar and Andy, and we've seen them do 2 drafts now. This will be their 3rd together. I think that they try to find a hybrid between best player available and drafting for need. I think they have certain positions that they consider a need, and then they're like, okay, first round, it's the best player amongst those needs. So we could possibly say running back, we could say defensive tackle, we could say cornerback, we could say safety possibly, even though I really wouldn't put that as a need right now because you got 3, you got Minka, you have Thornhill, and you have Deshaun Elliott. But Elliott's going to be a free agent after this year, and Thornhill's on a 1-year deal, so maybe you do look at safety. I don't know.
Safety, I mean, safety it's funny, out of all the positions on the field, safety just never gets mentioned.
Yep.
I mean, it's just, and that might have something to do with the class. We've had classes that were known for being really deep and rich in safeties, and that's not something that's attached to this.
The best athlete in this draft is a safety, Nick Emanwari. So this guy on Twitter does something called the relative athletic score. You see those cards everywhere, and he takes this. He literally has a formula to take their measurables, their 40-yard dash, their verticals, broad jump, all this stuff, and then makes a score out of it. Literally has a perfect 10 out of 10 based off of everything in terms of his 40-yard dash, his vertical jump, his broad jump, his everything that he possibly did. He literally is the most perfect athlete, which I don't know.
He's like the Nadia Comaneci of football, then getting his 10.0.
Yeah.
I don't think you should ever do that too. How often do you have a player, an athlete in any sport where you say, now there's a 10.0 at anything?
Yeah. No, I know. I'm not saying that is granted on just athleticism. That's not taking anything into account what he actually does on the football field. But yeah, that's important to note.
Billy Kurt says it was 1 pick. We have no idea yet. This is referring to Kenny, of course. If Tomlin can draft a quarterback, we'll find out these next 2 drafts, though. And then let's not cherry pick where we assign credit / blame where the Steelers are concerned as it relates to the draft. See, you can't say, here's a bad draft pick. Oh, yeah, Tomlin took this guy. And here's a really good draft pick, and Omar took that guy, which happens an awful lot. Because Omar is still in the honeymoon period. Andy Weidl's in there, of course. The way the draft picks go, the way the table works, and they will all attest to this, is that everyone who's sitting there has a voice.
Yeah.
Okay. And they will speak their mind, and they will do the either figurative or real pounding of the table for their guy. It can't be for their position. It has to be for their guy. And they'll do that, and it'll all come together. And even then, you're going to ask, who has the final word on this? Who has the last say, the definitive? They'll all tell you that if it gets really animated, heated, or whatever, guess who else is sitting at that table? Okay. Now, he's not going to come in, Art Rooney's not going to come in and say, well, I'm going to leave it up to Mike to make this call or whatever. He's just going to say, figure it out, gentlemen. And then they work at it, and then they reach a consensus, and then they all agree that consensus is the full face that they're going to put forward on this. Okay, they're all going to be beaming when they bring in this pick to meet us media types. Okay, even if they were at the table going, yeah. The one thing to remember too is that by the time draft night comes, a lot of the meetings that have taken place in which
you see the majority of the pounding of tables those are happening now. Those are usually happening now as the draft board is getting built, so that by the time draft night comes, they have their draft board built and they have a really easy direction of where to go.
Yeah, that's the other thing here. Here, I'm going to ask the boss a question here. What was the movie that you just watched? The NFL draft movie. Is it called The Draft? Do you know what she's talking about, Chris?
Day. Yeah, I think with Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner film. Okay, now I've only seen pieces of it. Who are they? The Rams?
The Browns.
The Browns. Oh my God! Why would you pick the Browns for something that you're supposed to look competent? The Browns have the Cleveland has steel mills still. They still have steel mills in city limits. We don't. But in that movie, when they were sitting around the table and whatever, did they pound the table? Did they get animated about it, or did they already have it figured out where everybody was going to draft?
No, just with a lot of machinations.
Okay, see, I mean, because I'm sure that happens. I mean, I've had that described to me that there is some whatever. But to what Chris is saying, that's the boring part, but it's the more telling part, which is they when they do this fighting,
mm-hmm.
It's when they're building the board, and it's the 1 through, I don't know, what is it? Kevin Colbert used to tell us the number. There was a number where they would run like 200 deep or something or whatever, their board.
Yeah. And
they wouldn't go any deeper than that because one way or another, all 200 of their guys were going to be available in 7 rounds, right?
Yeah.
So it's more a matter of who gets picked when, and then that's where need comes into it.
Yep.
If you address one need, well, then you're going to scratch off all the rest of your quarterbacks on the list. Make sense?
Yeah, and the thing is that a lot of the times now, granted, I've never personally seen a draft board, but I do know the way Matt Williamson's described one. And again, former scout, I'm going to take his word on it. This is not just a list, like a power rankings list. You can go onto Pro Football Focus's website and go look at their big board and then just see, oh, it's just ranked 1 through 20 or 1 through whatever. Like it's not like that. It's not just one long list. They might have one guy who's still on their board, who's still available, that it doesn't matter if it's at a position of need or not. This guy just fell. Okay, for example, the way it happened with the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, most likely. They're like, we weren't planning on taking a quarterback, but this guy literally just fell in our laps. We're not going to not draft him because he should not be here. And we're going to make sure that we're going to take advantage of that. And they did. And
I've seen a draft board, laid eyes on one once.
Yeah.
It was in baseball. I was invited into the office at PNC Park with the Pirates general manager. Mm-hmm. And he forgot to put they have these blankets, these drapes.
Oh, yeah.
And he didn't put it down. So I walk in there and it's over on the left and I see it. And this was about 8-9 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was handwritten. Now, my guess is that with the way everything is now on Google Docs and all these other machinations, that can move things faster and more efficiently and help you to avoid mistakes, just missing a guy. That's not the case anymore. But this one was handwritten. And what cool. A sight that was. I felt like I walked into like a movie or something. Dances with Brownies is what they should have called it. That's good.
That would have been
Get it?
Great.
Dances with Brownies? No, she didn't hear me.
That's funny.
Wandering Warrior says, I have faith in Khan and Weidl. It's Tomlin that I don't trust anymore. Well, yeah, we get that. But do you not trust him due to the draft? Do you not trust him just because, he doesn't use his clock properly or whatever? It's off. That's why it's so hard to dissect blame and credit and all that other stuff. We're going to take a couple more of these today here. Denny says, I would trust you with my draft board. No, you wouldn't. Don't never trust a reporter.
No.
Dude,
because our stances and everything are usually based off of what we've heard from people inside the organization or people who know about what's going on in the organization.
Yeah, Anonymous came in with a $20 contribution that was appreciated, and he writes too many turnovers, and that was back when we were talking about Jalen Milroe.
Yeah,
and then a lot of people brought up his hand size. I'm not ready for that conversation again.
Okay, so that became a big topic of discussion around the Senior Bowl because his hands measured at less than 9 inches at the Senior Bowl, which is an automatic no. That's a deal breaker. Like, that's not happening. But then
so what
at
did he
the
do? Like he slept on it or something, or he had somebody run over it with a car, like some like Wile E. Coyote. He's just showing his hand, and all of a sudden it's 2 feet long.
at the combine they measured. I think it was like 9.5 inches or something like that. I don't remember what the exact measurement was, but it was significantly more. Not like, oh, it's a 1/4 of an inch off, or it's 3/8 of an inch off. No, we're talking about like more than 1/2 of an inch. That doesn't happen. There's nothing you can do to make your hand that much bigger, which tells me that
That's hilarious.
the measurements at the Senior Bowl were wrong.
Yeah, Kenny did it too. Kenny talked about it. He would do all these exercises or whatever to make his hand measure bigger. It's like,
but it
didn't matter because it was going to go back to the default.
Yeah.
When he was going to play in an NFL game, you think he's going to be sleeping on it the night before, a game just to make sure that it's bigger? Jeffrey says, Chris, since the Steelers do not have a second round pick, which of course they dealt in exchange for DK Metcalf, what position do you see the Steelers taking in the third round? And before you answer that, I'll remind everybody that Omar Khan told reporters, including Chris in Palm Beach, Florida, that he'd like to get back into that second round.
Yeah, it's possible. And when you look at this particular draft, and we were talking about defensive tackles earlier, if Shedeur, there's a lot of talk right now that Shedeur Sanders could possibly slide. If he slides, if Jackson Dart slides, if any of these quarterbacks, or if a certain safety or certain whoever slides, you could always have a team that's willing to trade up to go get somebody, or you could have somebody who's willing to trade from having one of their first, second round picks and trade to get back into the first round again. And then you could get a real haul to not only get back into the second round possibly, but also maybe pick up an extra third or fourth. So I wouldn't rule that out, but if they do stand pat, in the third round, you're looking at, if they take a defensive tackle, which is still where I'm leaning, you could look at running back. There would be a lot of good running backs still available in the third round. You could possibly look at wide receiver again, even though I like to think if they stand pat that they thought, like their thinking is we used our second round pick on a wide receiver because they traded it to get DK Metcalf. So I would say running back would be an interesting one. If Milroe is somehow still there in the third round, I think that's the pick. To be honest, I don't think he'll be there though.
That'd be a pretty precipitous fall for a guy who's invited.
It would
to the first night. And by the way, if Deion's kid falls to the second round and Deion's on the scene, I
don't know if he falls to the second round, but if he falls in the first round at all, you could see a team possibly move up to go get him.
Yeah, I think you could. Chris, thanks for your time today and everything. And we'll be back with another one of these tomorrow. Really need to come up with an ending for these shows. Like it's always like, hey Chris, okay, and then it's just gone. I got to think of something, the way like over time, and those happen over time. Like with the Ramon Foster show, Ramon was the one who came up, obviously, with his signature closes and everything else. Okay, and I mean they came out of thin air. It's not like we discussed them or whatever. He was just like, here, it's Friday. I'm going to tell you a thing. Take care of call your mother. All that other stuff, right? We got nothing here. It's just like, okay, Chris, bye. That's the end of the show. Let's take care of some business here on this portion of the program, beginning with the boss's latest on the membership count. We're at 1806 on this. Again, the goal is 3,000 by Latrobe. We are marching steadily in that direction, I think is the fairest way to describe that here. Fishing for Trout, who's been a member for almost 2 years, that's as long as we've been doing this, incidentally, has gifted 5 memberships. And hopefully people like Wise Polecat will come in and seize those. I mentioned that Anonymous came in with a comment, 3-word comment, and dropped a 20 in the process. Jeffrey Carr dropped 5 gifts. And in addition to dropping $5 for the question that he just asked to Chris here, we got a bunch of new members here. DeLorean, Donking, AD left 5 of them here for us. Scott Patterson is new. Vic opened up our program with a 5 spot. Leroy was new. Beck is new. Dion is new. Welcome to everybody to our little world here. And I'm going to end today with a question that Randy Branch asks. Watch your show every day, and I wonder how you pick questions to answer. My wife is a member. She posts a question every day, and yet her question never gets picked. Okay, first off, Randy Branch's wife, I'm sorry. There's a lot of people in here, and I do hear occasionally from people that say, what do you want me to do here? Jump up and down or something? It's a really haphazard, spontaneous process for how we do this. The comments are moving like this. And if you want some behind the scenes stuff, when I'm talking, either Chris or my wife Dolly will put comments up because I can't talk and look at your comments at the same time. When Chris is talking, I'll be the one looking at the comments and I'll put them up and choose them. I'm usually the one that's picking the questions though. So if your wife is angry with anybody, by all means, let her be angry with me. I'll try harder. I will tell you this though. If you're a member and your name shows up in green, that gives you a much better chance. So she's already off to a good start here. So listen, guys, appreciate it. Again, the memberships are at 1806. The way to get yours is to go to dkps.net/join. You can see it right there on the screen. Just type it into your URL. We'd be happy to have you. It's just 99 cents a month. And we're going to have some members only content coming up later this month as we both approach and engage in the NFL draft. See everybody tomorrow.